Standing by. John?
Well, Michael, the two head coaches have taken decidedly different strategies in preparing their teams for Super Bowl 48. The Broncos, they switched team hotels last night in an effort for maximum privacy. The Seahawks, they stayed in theirs. Broncos head coach John Fox, well, he's had his team practicing outside for much of the week in an effort to get his team ready just in case the weather gets inclement, whereas Seahawks head coach Pete Carroll has had his team working inside much of the week. We'll see in a couple of hours which of these two head coaches has best prepared his guys to make championship-winning plays tonight.
Joining us now from MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey is John Henry Smith. And John, I think even diehard Seahawks fans were surprised by tonight's outcome. What was the reaction of the team itself?
Oh, the team, of course, they were surprised, and if they were surprised by the margin of victory, they wouldn't let that on after the game. But, you know, you got to look at this situation. Certainly, the Denver Broncos coming into this one, they had the big-name quarterback in Peyton Manning. They had the greatest offense the NFL had ever seen. They had the Super Bowl experience and guys like Wes Welker, whereas Seattle was one of the youngest teams to make it to the big game, and they didn't have a single player on the roster with any Super Bowl experience. But as it turns out, that youth did not translate into inexperience. It translated into hunger, and I caught up with one of those hungry Seahawks after Seattle's big 43-8 win. Tight end Zach Miller.
Feels great. Just in shock right now. Just so happy. Can't wait to get out of here and celebrate with my teammates.
Well, listen, you and a lot of guys, you, Cliff Averill, a lot of guys came from programs that had fallen on hard times. You hadn't had a lot of wins. You know, how's it feel after all that struggle to come here and finally get it done this way together here in Seattle?
I think it makes it all the better. Being through what we've been through and to have this success now, I think, you know, that hard road traveled makes this all worth it and just feels great and even better, I think, than if you had success your whole career.
And the Seattle Seahawks go on to win the Super Bowl 43-8. They win their first Super Bowl ever, first championship for the city since 1979 when the Seattle Supersonics did it in the NBA. And as for the Denver Broncos, they set an NFL record. They now have 5 Super Bowl losses. Michael?
John, one thing that was noticeable even watching on television is how loud it was in the stadium, especially when Denver had the ball on offense. It seemed as though the 12th man for Seattle certainly showed up tonight. How did it feel being inside the stadium tonight?
Well, let's start outside the stadium, and let's start earlier in this week. The 12th man has been huge this week. They've been a humongous presence all over the city of New York. You couldn't go 5 feet without tripping over somebody in a Seattle Seahawks jersey. And they had a banner flying over the stadium yesterday with the big number 12. Certainly, the Seahawks fans acquitted themselves very well, and they can take pride in saying, hey, we were the 12th man, and maybe we did have a role in Seattle's big win. Michael?
They showed up, and their team showed up as well. Tremendous outing.
It was a first for the Seattle Seahawks last night in Super Bowl 48. John Henry Smith is in East Rutherford, New Jersey, with more on this blowout victory. Good morning again, John.
Good morning, Stephanie. You know, Super Bowl week seemed to be setting up as a coronation of sorts for Peyton Manning, as the popular sentiment seemed to assume that he was just destined to cap off a record-breaking season with a Super Bowl win. But the Seattle Seahawks wasted no time turning coronation into devastation. The Seahawks fans yelled so loud on the first play from scrimmage that Broncos center Manny Ramirez snapped the ball before Manning was ready. The result of the play was a safety and a 2-0 lead for Seattle just 12 seconds into the game, the quickest score in Super Bowl history. Seattle pass rusher Cliff Averill got credit for the safety, and he got into Manning's grill later, forcing Manning to throw one of those ducks Richard Sherman talked about during Super Bowl week into the arms of linebacker Malcolm Smith. He ran it back the other way, all the way 69 yards for a score. Seattle led Denver by a stunning 22-0 at halftime. Surely the Broncos would rally in the second half, right? Percy Harvin said wrong, taking the opening kickoff of the second half, 87 yards for the touchdown that broke the Broncos back, not to mention their will. The Seahawks win the Super Bowl 43-8.
I kind of told the guys, why not us?
Go out there and get in our zone and never come out of it, man. Let's go play our best football, and that's what we tried to do.
Well, this was not the way things were supposed to turn out for Peyton Manning after a season in which he set NFL records for passing yardage and for passing touchdowns. While Manning did set a Super Bowl record with 33 completions, he did not have a good game overall. Manning now drops to 1-2 lifetime in Super Bowl competition, and his postseason record dips now to 11-12. A disappointing night for the future Hall of Famer.
Well, it's disappointing for our entire team, but eventually we have to.
Well, if you recall Denver's unfortunate first play, center Manny Ramirez says it happened because fans were yelling so loud he couldn't hear Manning's signal call. Seattle fans, the so-called 12th man, made their presence felt on that play, and according to Pete Carroll, Seattle's coach, all game long.
For all the kids and all the families and the people that have waited.
So Seattle wins its first championship of a pro variety of any kind since 1979 when the Supersonics won the NBA crown. From East Rutherford, New Jersey, I'm John Henry Smith, Al Jazeera.
John Henry, thanks so much.
John Henry Smith is at MetLife Stadium in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And John, you would have thought that this was a home team the way that they dominated, really, the Broncos at a time when really everybody was picking the Broncos to win.
Well, and certainly you would have thought this might have been a home game for Seattle. Their fans were raucous and celebratory even before opening kickoff. Sort of a reflection of this team's head coach. And, one consistent theme that we've heard throughout Super Bowl week from the Seahawks players is how much they enjoy playing for head coach Pete Carroll. They talk about the loose atmosphere he fosters around the team, the way he lets the players be themselves, play their own music, the way he makes the game of football fun. His youthful demeanor belies the fact that at 62 years old, he's the second oldest coach in the NFL. Whatever he's doing, it must be pretty good. In just 4 years, he's led the Seattle Seahawks to the franchise's first Super Bowl victory. And with his win Sunday night, Carroll has become the third coach ever to win a Lombardi Trophy and to win an NCAA national championship. He did that during his stint before he got to the Seattle with the University of Southern California. All of this from a guy who was considered a failure as a head coach in the 90s. He was fired from stints with the New York Jets and with the New England Patriots. Pete Carroll has certainly come a long way to the spot he is in now, a person looked upon as perhaps the best coach in the National Football League. From East Rutherford, New Jersey, I'm John Henry Smith, Al Jazeera.
John Henry Smith at MetLife Stadium. John, thank you very much. And of course, we'll have John Henry Smith is at MetLife Stadium with football analyst Anita Marks. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning to you, Del. And I start the questions here with Anita Marks about last night's fantastic game. Super Bowl 48, proof positive that defense wins championships, Anita?
Absolutely. I mean, how can you not deny it? You've got 16 times a number one defense has played in the Super Bowl. They've won 13 of those 16. And when you look at defenses that have played in the Super Bowl, you got to say, well, was this the best defense ever in the history of the NFL? Some would say yes, because they destroyed a legend yesterday. Destroyed. And Peyton Manning. 51 times Peyton Manning dropped back to pass, and only 6 times the Seattle Seahawks blitzed. It tells you how great that defense is, and really, they're the reason they won yesterday.
Anita, really fitting in light of all that a defender won the game MVP honors, but did the right player win? Because yes, the linebacker Malcolm Smith had a great game, but I submit to you that Cliff Averill or Cam Chancellor were more deserving. What do you say?
Well, as we just said, defense wins championships. Their defense won the championship for them. They had to give it to somebody, and when you look at the stats, Malcolm Smith, 10 tackles, a pick for 6, a fumble recovery. He
doesn't get that pick for 6 without Cliff Averill's pressure.
No, he does not, but he also made a good approach on the ball while running back Nosha Moreno just sat there and watched the duck, as Richard Sherman likes to call Peyton Manning's passes. But who else are you going to give it to? You had to give it to a defensive player, and because he had the gaudy stats, I think that's why they gave it to Malcolm Smith.
Well, we've been talking defense, but of course, the quarterbacks are always the focus of attention, and you had the old school Peyton Manning versus the new school Russell Wilson. have we seen a passing of the torch with Russell Wilson's big win?
I wouldn't say maybe this game we saw the passing of the torch. We saw Colin Kaepernick play in last year's Super Bowl, this year's NFC Championship. Cam Newton made it to the Super Bowl. I think we're going to see maybe a change in money where maybe you're not going to pay the quarterbacks in the NFL $20 million a year. Maybe you're going to spend that money on defensive players because, again, defense wins championships. One thing that I think we might see is because how well Russell Wilson did, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, maybe, just maybe, this opens the door for Johnny Manziel coming out in this year's NFL draft, might go number 1 to the Houston Texans.
Oh, I like Johnny Manziel a lot. Yeah,
Keep an eye on it.
I like Johnny Manziel a lot. Very quickly, we've got about 20 seconds.
Sure.
Do we have a dynasty in the making in Seattle?
You know what? I think we do. The Seattle Seahawks is one of the youngest, if not the second youngest team in the NFL. Their age range, average age is 26. They draft extremely well. I want to say 21 of their 53 players actually went undrafted. That's how great their suits are and the talent that they bring in. And Russell Wilson, very young, only entering his 3rd year in the NFL. They're not going to be able to restructure his contract for another 2 years. So that's key.
Well, they certainly going to have to pay Russell Wilson at some point, so we'll certainly see when the bill comes due whether or not they can maintain that high level of excellence that they've settled in Seattle. Anita Marks, thank you very much for your time, and that's a wrap from MetLife Stadium. John Henry Smith, Al Jazeera.